Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Right now, I'm just hanging out here on the porch. If you guys are wondering why I've got a bunch of roofing material, like those metal sheets that we actually built this barn dominium out of, I'm actually putting them out there to choke off the sunlight. We're gonna do a garden there, so do some vegetable gardening. And so just a good way to kill off those weeds without having to use herbicide. So just kind of letting you know why we've got those things out there. But anyways, as I'm sitting here, I'm really just kind of reflecting on the state of the industry, the fishing industry and the sport overall. And because there's been a lot of talk recently, there's been a lot of people doing videos about their experience in the sport and how it really hasn't matched what they thought it really was. And rightly so. I mean, things have really been changing quickly over the last decade especially. And so I wanted to touch up on that because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that want to become a professional fisherman. And professional fishing, in my mind, there's a difference between being a professional fisherman or a professional angler and a touring professional angler, a competitive professional. To me, those are two different things. Now, you, as we'll talk about in this video, you can do both, and you should be doing both, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But to me, you can be a professional in the sport without being a competitive angler. You don't even have to fish a tournament nowadays, and so that's what we're going to discuss. But to me, it's so important for people to have realistic expectations and a generally good idea as to what the job actually is, and how it works as far as getting sponsorship dollars and making a living in this this whole deal. Because I've been at it for a long time. In 2006, I moved to Florida to go to college to pursue my passion for tournament fishing and to pursue this career. I knew I was going to do it. I didn't know when it was going to start happening, but I knew that all I wanted to do was fish for a living, and so I just out of necessity, would absorb every bit of information that I possibly could and talk to anybody that I possibly could about how to do that. And it became obvious to me in 2006 that there was more to it than just fishing, because on the surface level, it seemed like, when I was watching the old Bassmasters shows on television, when I was living in Paradise, California, I'd be sitting there in the living room just watching those Bassmasters commercials or episodes, and it just looked like those guys were making raking in tons of dough for just catching fish. And there's a little bit of truth to that, because back then it was a little bit different. And so I had this skewed kind of idea as to what the job actually was. It just looked like, if you did well in tournaments, the sponsorship dollars were just going to start coming in. The mailbox would be full of checks. And I think that I know that things have changed dramatically since that era. And yeah, that preconceived notion of what the sport is, or what a professional angler has to deal with to make a living, I think was off target, but not too far off target for that generation of the sport. Nowadays, I've learned, and again, this goes back to moving to Florida in 2006 and doing everything to learn about the sport and how to become a professional. I started to learn that there's more to it. So I started talking with guys like Mike Iaconelli, Ishman Rowe, and anybody that I could possibly talk to that was in that category that I wanted to achieve. And it was obvious that the business side of the sport cannot be neglected. It's a very, very important aspect to the job. And back then, you know, in the early and late, you know, the 2006 to 2010 period, you still had that old template. And back then it was just like, yeah, the business side was very important, but there was a distinct separation between the influencers. What were the influencer term never really came up back then, but that's essentially what professional anglers were. A tournament angler that had had a lot of tournament success would be able to have a large audience to speak to. And so they were the influencers, right? And then you had the content producers that were totally different. Now, some people recognize the need to do both, and so they kind of like would hire people out to create the content for them. But really, there was this separation between the influencers who were making a lot of money in sponsorship, and then the content producers that were also making money, through whatever avenues they were doing, creating that content. So the pros would do well in tournaments; they'd fish their tournaments, and then a podcaster or radio show host or a TV host or somebody that is a writer or produces content like video content online or something like that, they would call them, and those content producers would then put them on camera, put them on the radio, whatever medium they were on. And so the influencers really didn't have to do any of the content production at that time. And so it was simpler. To me, I started, my career started to really gain some momentum, like right as this was changing. And so back then, all you had to do was maintain good relationships with the content producers to have them be able to put that camera in your face so you could promote the brands that you're hired to promote. So it was a simpler time back then, 15, 20 years ago and prior. And then the advent and the really when people started to realize the value of social media, that's when things started to really change. So you had that original pie that consisted of the marketing budgets for all the different brands, endemically or non-endemically, and it was going in, like, bigger chunks of the pie were going to individuals, but nowadays you've got not only the influencer, the tournament anglers who were the primary influencers back in the day, but you've got then you also had television and things like that, which I would consider them the content producers. But nowadays you've got the influencers who are the content producers on all these different platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, Facebook. All these people that maybe they don't have any tournament experience at all, they're creating content and they're becoming the influencers. There's a lot of talk about whether or not that is actually a good thing. I think it's a great thing. If somebody is towing the line for the sport and promoting the industry, promoting the sport, and helping people get better at pursuing fish, that to me is a good thing, regardless of if you have a tournament pedigree or not. I think it's honestly ridiculous for somebody to think that not being a tournament angler is kind of like, means that you shouldn't have credibility. If you catch fish and you help people catch fish, dude, that's cool to me. I love it. Now, I'm a tournament guy, so like I also think that tournaments do give you more credibility in some senses. So if you can mix both the content production and tournament fishing and a good tournament fishing track record, I think that gives you more credibility. But I don't think that you have to have a tournament pedigree again to have credibility. So anyways, that's how the landscape has changed. Is this, you have this pretty much the same relative size pie for marketing budgets within the industry, but now it's going in so many different directions. So essentially nowadays what we have to do as professional anglers is you have to adapt. You have to, you have to build your audience, because in the past, your audience was pretty much handed to you on a silver platter if you did well in tournaments, which obviously took a lot of work. But nowadays, you have to build your own brand. You have to build your audience, and everybody has an audience. That's one thing that really, makes me sad. Sometimes I talk to people and they're like, my son, he's not really, that outgoing. He doesn't like talking to the camera that much. There's an audience for every type of anybody out there. That has, if you're outgoing, if you're more of an introvert, there is an audience for you. You just need to figure out how to communicate to that audience in some way, on social media. And it's not that hard. I'm sitting here on my phone, take my phone out of my pocket and start talking to you guys on this. And it takes time. It really does. It's a learned skill to be able to do this. But over time, you get comfortable with it. And if you talk slower, if you say a lot, it's okay. There's other people out there that will relate to that. So there's not a single person out there that doesn't have another person that wants to hear what they have to say. And so just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. And that's the reality of the business, is the fact that tournament fishing is losing. Tournament fishing at face value is losing value every single year, because these companies want to invest in somebody that is getting out there, is getting more visibility, more eyeballs on them. And when you have such an accessible, amount of content on all these different platforms, that's where people want to put their attention a lot of times. And so it's not necessarily just the tournaments that are getting, the visibility anymore. It's really changed a lot of things. And I know why people are resentful, but if you really want to make a living at this sport, you have to, and I've done videos on this in the past, you have to be focus on providing value of some sort and speaking to an audience, building your brand, and then putting your sponsors at the forefront, and making them visible to that audience. So, just if you're looking to get into the sport, yes, focus on the fishing, enjoy the fishing. If you want to be a tournament angler, awesome. There's still some great opportunities in the tournament space, but don't think for a second that the job is just going out there and fishing. And if you do well, the sponsors will come to you. You have to leverage the good success on the water by utilizing a good fan base. So having good social media, and it's not as hard as people think. You don't have to have a high production value, TV show to create great content. You can pick up your phone and just talk to people, like we're doing right here, and I feel like I get a good response from these type of videos, and my channel is growing at a very, good pace for me. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to speak on that because I've seen a lot of people do videos. Most people that I watch these videos, they are right. But I also want the perspective to be overall positive, because there's so many great opportunities in the sport. It's not like the opportunities are drying up. The opportunities are just changing and maybe fracturing off into different types of opportunities. A lot of companies nowadays are valuing influencer social media content producers more than they are just the straight tournament anglers. But if you can do both, it's a great opportunity for you to potentially make some good money. And I think that over time, if you keep the pressure on like I have since 2006, you're going to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish as far as income wise. I know there's a lot of people that would disagree, but honestly, it takes a long time. It takes at least a decade for you to start making some money in this industry, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the wait, and that's my take. So anyways, guys, I know I rambled on and on about this topic and kind of went off in different tangents, but I feel like it's important to talk about this stuff for the health of the sport and just kind of a healthy expectation of what young people are up against getting into this sport. So if you have any questions at all, I'd love to answer your questions. So drop a comment below. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this content. And if you did, make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water, and make sure you trust the process. And that goes especially for the business side.